Elation and jubilation gamers from all around the world. I am Lucian and this is the World Gamer Show. To celebrate the release of the new Resident Evil 3 remake, I decided to go down the memory lane and take a look at the original, the one and only
Resident Evil 3
Nemesis, also known as
Biohazard
3 Last Escape in Japan by the evergreen Capcom. So without further ado, let's get started! What originally started as a mere spin-off under the title of Resident Evil Nemesis, ditching the number 3, was later promoted to be the official sequel to RE2, due to Capcom having contractual obligations towards Sony to bring at least 3 main chapters to the original PlayStation. So to get around the fact that they were actually going to develop the 3rd chapter exclusively, at the time at least, for the Sega Dreamcast, they decided to swap the names between this chapter for Dreamcast, that we've eventually come to know as Resident Evil Code Veronica, and the PS1 spin-off Resident Evil Nemesis, which will become Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. When this was released in 1999, basically the whole world of gaming, me included, was in full Resident Evil mania, or hysteria if you wish. Resident Evil 2 was a masterpiece, and the series received lots of publicity for its controversial violence, blood and gore. So expectations were high, and the RE3 demo that came out bundled with Dino Crisis really contributed in getting gamers all hyped up. Now that we are finally done with this history lesson, we can start talking about the game itself, because there's a lot to cover here. First off, this takes place right before, during and after the events of RE2, and sees Jill Valentine try to escape a zombie-infested, monsters-packed, ever-dark Raccoon City. This is where Capcom decided to deviate a little from the classic Resident Evil formula. While this is still a classic Resident Evil through and through, the first signs of a more action-focused orientation for the series started right here. But don't panic! Because as I said, this is still a classic Resident Evil, and if more action-orientated means I get some more moves to better deal with the bunch of enemies that the game is going to throw to my face, well, so be it. Let's not forget that Resident Evil 2 wasn't so light on action either, with some corridors literally packed with zombies, within rooms so narrow that was literally impossible to just run through without getting bitten at least once. So please explain me the big difference between this and this. I tell you the difference. You can finally turn quickly and run for your life. Yes, they took Dino Crisis Regina's 180-degree turn and gave it to Jill Valentine. Better yet, in an even more intuitive way. Now instead of reaching to one of the shoulder buttons, you push back and the run button. This way your finger is already on the right button for a fast escape. This will become standard for future chapters. Moreover, you can finally go up and down the stairs without having to press the action button, which in the previous episodes will trigger an automated walk, and it makes moving around so much smoother. On the other side, now the zombies can go up and down the stairs too, so this was actually a necessity. Finally, Jill can now quickly dodge enemies by pressing the aim button at the last moment before an incoming attack. And this is also very useful, and while I wish there was a dedicated button rather than using the aim button, which means that one can trigger this move without willing, I feel it's a step in the right direction. And to be honest, I wish I had this move when fighting the leakers in Resident Evil 2. Also, now you're able to make your own ammos, combining powders of different kind. This adds a further element of strategy to the game, because as usual for the classic Resident Evil, your inventory is very limited, and you have to choose carefully which fundamental items you want to bring with you, among keys, ammos and healing items, leaving the rest to the interdimensionally connected item boxes. Now, I've heard some criticism towards this powder mechanic, to which I respond, oh, come on! This isn't so bad, and if it was, they wouldn't have had it added back to the remake, no? So you see, these little changes don't break the classic RE feeling. Cameras are still fixed, tank controls are still tanky. Mainly because these aren't really big changes. They're more of an improvement to the controls, which is something that the series was in desperate need at the time already. So this was to me a welcome change. But not all changes were welcomed as much. And Resi 3 starts to show its original spin-off nature when you realize that there are no multiple campaigns to play through. Yes, there are multiple characters aside from Jill, like Carlos, but he's still playable in Jill's campaign, so that doesn't count. It's like playing as Ada during Leon's campaign in Resi 2, or Rebecca during Chris's playthrough in Resi 1. So how did they try to compensate for that? Well, quite nicely actually. During Jill's campaign there are certain points in which the game will freeze and ask you to make a choice between two possible options. Depending on which one you choose, you might end up in a different location or have a different outcome during a fight. Add to this the fact that you only have seconds to choose which option you want to take. Otherwise, the game might choose for you, or you can even experience a third outcome. Now, to be fair, not all decisions have a huge impact on the gameplay. And this is not even the only ace that this game has up its sleeve when it comes to longevity. Once you finish the game for the first time, you unlock the Mercenaries minigame, another famous feature in the series which originated from Resi 3. Even though this first incarnation differs in some key points, the aim is still the same: survive and kill monsters to earn precious seconds before your time runs out. Unlike the future entries though, here you don't just survive. To win, you need to reach a specific location, but the time is so scarce that you need to kill as many monsters as you can to earn precious seconds. The catch is that your resources are very limited, and even by killing many enemies, you might not make it. That's where rescuing people in danger may help, as they can reward you with time or bonus items. What's fantastic is that you can spend all your virtual cash earned with the mercenaries to buy new weapons to use on the main game, hence increasing the replayability even more. As you can already tell between the secret costumes, secret diaries, multiple paths and endings, you won't miss the double campaign too much. And for one thing that the Resi 3 has less, there are many improvements. Aside from the already mentioned better controls, the graphics have improved as well. The FMV's quality is far superior than in Resi 2, and all the 3D models have a much higher polygon count, especially the monsters. And oh, the monsters! I wonder how I managed to get this far into the review without even talking about the star of the show, Nemesis. I mean, it's even in the title of the game itself. This bastard over here is possibly the main reason for which this chapter managed to stay so long in the heart of the fans. Nemesis is the creature that will threat you throughout the whole game. It's a juggernaut, an unstoppable killing machine. He's capable of killing you in just few hits or shots, depending on his equipment. Basically, when you see him, you run. But unlike previous chapters, even running won't be enough sometimes, because you see, he's capable of following the player through doors. Exactly. What before was like a relief, reaching for a door, running away from monsters, knowing that they can't follow you around, it is nowhere to be found here. This adds a new element of fear, and it's a huge improvement over the previous scripted tyrant encounters. Just a quick trick for you though, in case you don't know. If you're being chased by Nemesis and you literally need some seconds to breathe, just know that he won't follow you straight away after you reach the new room. As long as you stay where you can see the door from which you came in. Because you see, doors are part of the pre-rendered background, which of course can't change, hence can't really be seen opening. So, Nemesis won't come into the room you're in unless you move away from the door, giving you a temporary relief. Aside from this ingenious trick, which allowed Capcom to work around some inherent limitations, these chasing sequences work perfectly. Nemesis will follow you around whether you are in a building or on the streets. Speaking of which, you can now see so much more than just police stations and secret labs. You wander around the streets of Raccoon City much more than just the glimpse you could see in Resi 2, giving a better context of the conditions which the city was in. Between cafes, boutiques, hospitals and even a cemetery, there's no shortage of places to visit. So the variety has definitely gone up since the previous games. Overall, I can totally see how some fans were bummed a little by the lack of a real dual character system, like in the previous 2 episodes. And I know that it's also more action orientated now. But let's be fair, its user friendliness shouldn't be considered a step back, but rather a positive thing, a good way to start for those who are new to the classic Resi formula. Or the classic survival horror formula for that matter, especially because it doesn't sacrifice that much in the transition. This chapter brings so many improvements to the table that it's undeniable, and it has so many exclusive features, which will later become standard in the series, to still earn it a spot among the best survival horror games ever released.